Jeremiah Kipp, diretor americano que tem diversos projetos, principalmente no terror. Vamos ver o que ele tem a nos dizer. Olá, pessoal do YouTube, como vai vocês? Hoje eu estou aqui com Jeremiah Kipp. How are you, man?
I'm great. It's good to be talking to you.
Okay. Jeremiah, you are a director known for very visual style. How do you work to create this realistic nightmare atmosphere?
Oh, it starts with the script. I read the script and I really try to examine what the whole movie is about. And then I try to think about what each scene is about. And the camera and the edit are really there to help tell those pieces of the story. And you can only do that if you know what you're trying to accomplish with each scene. And I always think of the camera as being about the subtext of the scene, what's happening underneath the scene. Uh, and I think that if you understand the subtext of the scene, you know what it's really, really about. Uh, and every shot that you take in the movie, no matter how visually extravagant, exists to support what you're trying to convey to the viewer or trying to convey what the character is going through at the time. So when I think visually, I always think from character, and what the character is going through, and I translate that into a visual.
Many of your films, like Slapface,
Yeah.
rely heavily on silence and isolation. Would
Hmm.
you consider this a trademark of your work? Also, do you personally prefer exploring the psychological side of horror?
Yeah, well, the isolation and the loneliness of some of the films kind of has to do with me. I think that a lot of directors, their personality comes through in their work. So when you watch a film by Martin Scorsese, it zigs and it zags and it moves, and when you listen to him talk, he talks really fast and he's talking, and the movies feel like that. And when you watch a David Lynch movie, it's like slow and strange. And when you listen to him talk, it's very slow and strange. Uh, Rest in peace, David Lynch. But I grew up in a very, you know, isolated part of New England in the United
Mm.
States. So there was a lot of isolation and loneliness in my childhood, you know. And I, as much as I love people and love being around people and love sharing experiences with them, making the movie as well, a big part of my life has been uh, like right now even, I'm in upstate New York and I'm essentially isolated up here right now, you know. So there are things in my life that I put into the work, and because I think loneliness and a sense of isolation are psychological, uh, I think that those things translate into a certain kind of psychological, character-driven horror that is the horror that I'm most interested in.
Slapface deals with bullying and childhood trauma in a very heavy way. Why use the monster as a metaphor for emotional violence?
Because I think that emotional violence comes from a place of love and of
Mhm.
need. And I think that the monster wants to be loved and needed, and the monster befriends the child, seeing somebody who is equally vulnerable and lonely, and when the monster perceives something is happening to the child that is harmful, the response is extreme violence. I think that uh, violence within families or communities, or children is all emotional. Even bullies who cause harm to others are coming from a place of fear. They're so afraid. And when one is very frightened, you become very frightening, you know.
Yes.
So that's kind of where it comes from. Weirdly, it's paradoxical, but I think that the monster coming from a place of love and need is actually the thing that is causing the violence and the terror.
Yeah, now adapting a game with such a massive following like the Mortuary Assistant comes with high stakes. How did manage the expectation of core fan base while making it your own?
That is the supreme challenge of video game adaptation. You know, I loved the video game. I loved it so much. I loved the characters. I loved the world of the game. I loved the lore and the mystery of the game. I loved uncovering the different endings. Uh, so when I interviewed for that job, I came from a place of very sincere desire to convey the world of Rebecca Owens, who's the main character of the game. She is the title character, the mortuary assistant. And I just loved the bizarre liminal space inside of the game. I loved the layout of the mortuary and I wanted to replicate the mortuary. Like I wanted to take the game and turn it into a cinematic representation. Uh, and the game creator, the solo game developer, Brian Clark, was part of the process of choosing me to direct the film. And Brian wanted me to direct the film. He was part of the decision making, and he said Jeremiah is the one who understands what I was trying to do. And that made me feel very empowered. And I decided to include the game creator with me every step of the way. So through every version of the script, all through pre-production and the casting process, when we were designing the sets, I made sure that Brian was involved creatively because I cared about his game so much. And I was like, if the game creator is happy with my work, then that would be, you know, that would be my way to walk out into the world with the numerous fans who have their own opinions about what the Mortuary Assistant film should be and say, I was coming from a place of caring deeply about the same things that you care about. Now, it's a video game adaptation, so the people who play the game are very passionate and have very strong opinions about what it should be. And I was a little unprepared for how strongly they felt about it. Even with having Brian with me for the entire shoot, he was with me for all the principal photography. He plays one of the dead bodies in the movie. Uh, at the premiere of the film in New York, he was standing right next to me. We introduced the film. We've done many interviews together. Even with all that and with the total support of the creator, you know, the film is something new, and I'm not entitled to the audience who love the game loving our movie. It's like they will either love the movie on its own they will like the movie on its own terms, or they will hate the movie on its own terms. You know.
I'm excited
Uh,
to watch that film.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of the film, and it was made with care and with reverence for the game for sure.
Is there a specific horror subgenre like folk horror, body
Oh,
horror, or slasher that you haven't tackled but are dying to explore?
oh, well, I love as you can probably guess, I love folk horror and I love body horror.
Mm.
So I got to do folk horror in Slapface through a rural setting and a dense mythology. I would love to return to folk horror. I've done body horror, and I would love to return to body horror. Like I loved all of the mortuary scenes in the Mortuary Assistant where, we even got like a medical lens to put on the camera so that you could get very close to the incisions and the mortuary science and the slicing open of bodies. But the genre that I would love to do that I haven't done yet is I would really love to do a serial killer movie, but done seriously. Like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, takes the material very seriously and goes to a very dark, character-driven place. Like that's something that I'd be very excited about doing, as long as it were done with an understanding that we're to take it, that we're really going to make it about character and not do something that is exploitative and existing for its own sake to watch torture and murder. That would not interest me. But Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is all about that character, the fascination of trying to understand who that person is. And I
Mm,
would love to do a movie like that.
yeah. If you could choose any classic or franchise to put your personal touch on your reboot, which would it be?
I would love to do an adaptation of a Clive Barker story. They made a film of Rawhead Rex, which is one of his stories from Books of Blood. And that didn't work out very well. Like Clive Barker even was very unhappy with it, which is why he went and directed Hellraiser. And but I love that story. I love Rawhead Rex. I think it's a brilliant monster, and I would absolutely love to adapt that into a film. I think that it would be, I mean, I think that now 40 years after they initially tried, I think that we can achieve with special effects what they weren't able to back then. But I think, I'm trying to dodge your question because I think you're asking about what franchise would I like to be a part of. And nobody would ever let me do this, but I love Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Really?
I love Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And I wouldn't want to remake it, but I would want to update it with modern technology and bring back Tom Atkins, at least for a cameo, to play the Doctor, and maybe try something along those lines. But yeah, so I mean,
I love Halloween, but my franchise is Saw movie.
oh no, the Saw movies are phenomenal, and
Yeah.
Saw 10, Saw X, I thought was just such a refreshing take,
Yeah.
and it was so good to see those actors back, like and in Mexico. So the Saw franchise I thought was done, but then Saw X comes along and it's like fresh new
Yeah.
interpretation of it. Wonderful.
It's wonderful. And the last question, what advice do you have for directors who are just starting out with a low budget, but big genres ideas?
What I did when I was starting out, like young emerging filmmakers today, was when I got out of school, I met some friends who were also interested in making films, and we just made a lot of movies. And they were, and not for money, not for any other reason than to make things and practice. And if I were doing that today, then I would use YouTube and TikTok and like put movies out into the world in that way for no money. I mean, we made these things for no money, like $0, or the price of lunch. I'll buy everybody lunch, you know.
Yes.
And we did it as a group, as a collective. So one week I would direct, and the next week someone else would direct, and the next week someone else would direct. And you wind up doing all the different jobs making a movie. So you learn a lot. And I think that's what I would advise is find people who are your people, like-minded people, just friends. And it doesn't matter if you're in New York like I am or in some other part of the world. Like find people and get your phone out, and tell and make some scary stories very cheaply. Like even if it's just with your family. When I was a child, I made films with my granddad and my mom, you know.
Yes.
And I would say do that and keep practicing that and do it over and over and over again if you love it. If it makes you happy, keep doing that. Eventually, you and your friends will get more experienced and you're going to get bored doing that and you're just going to get more ambitious and you're going to say, what if we got one really great special effect in our movie, and then you would put some resources into one good special effect, and then before you know it, like after a couple of years of doing that with my friends, we were doing what felt like real movies, with full crews and everything, again, none of us were getting paid for it, but I would advise that find your community, find your friends, find like-minded people, make something. Very importantly, put it out into the world, YouTube, TikTok, when you feel comfortable enough, put it out into film festivals, and then go to the film festivals and meet people, and you will meet people who will help you, you know. You'll meet a lot of people who will tell you to go to hell too. But
Yes.
but you will also meet people who will help you because you're all starting out on the same level, you know. And I never stopped loving it, when I was making movies for $0 and when I was making The Mortuary Assistant, I felt the same. I love making movies and I love telling stories and I love the horror genre like you do, you know. Uh,
Mhm.
and and that never changed. So my advice to emerging filmmakers is to just, it sounds so trite, but it is true. Go find your community, go out and make things and put those things out into the world and keep doing it as long as it makes you happy. And then if you keep doing it, you will just keep getting better and better and you will know more and more people and you will just keep growing. And that's a life, you know. That's not just movie making, that's a life, and it's a wonderful experience.
Yes, that's fantastic. Jeremiah, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. Brazil loves horror films.
Oh, I love Brazil, I love that Brazil loves horror films, You have such a rich history, that informs your love of horror films, the good and the bad, that informs the country's love of horror films. So I love Brazil.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Now Brazil is making more horror films.
It's exciting. I'm so here for it. I'm really excited to see what comes out of the Brazilian horror film community. It's very important.
Yes. Thank you, Jeremiah, for sharing your works. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
The pleasure was mine.